Today on Primetime Local News, I'm joined by Ray Orb, who is the president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities. Now, Ray, you guys put out a call asking for grain companies to work with farmers a little bit on their unfulfilled grain contracts. What can you tell me about what prompted this call?
Well, SARM felt it was necessary to reach out to the grain companies because of the fact that this year there were a lot of farmers that had forward contracted grain and did not get the yield that they were hoping that they would get. So they're short of grain, so they can't fill those contracts. And so there are lots of things out there that have happened to the farmers and the ranchers this year because of the drought. And this is one of them. This is the aftermath of not getting a good crop, and it's adding a lot more stress to the farming community.
And that's on top of an already frustrating growing season for a lot of farmers. You know, Mother Nature didn't really give them what they wanted this year. And that being said, do these grain contracts not have a clause for an act of God?
Not many different kinds of crops have act of God in them. For those that don't, you know, the farmer is really at risk. And these are tools that the agriculture industry uses every year because farmers need to price some of their grain ahead of time. That's a marketing tactic that most farmers use. And the grain companies actually rely on that too, because the grain companies have customers they need to supply the grain to as well. So those kind of are partnerships, you know, in the grain industry, and they've been going on like that for quite some time. This year, however, it's a different kind of scenario because the crops, you know, across our province were not very good. In some areas, there were really no crops at all. And so this has complicated the issue, and that's why we're trying to reach out and get some attention out there that farmers need to be somehow treated a bit differently this year.
Absolutely. So are you guys just asking grain companies for, hey, show us some leniency, or does SARM have, you know, specific suggestions on what these grain companies could do?
Well, we're kind of asking for both. I think we're asking for attention. We're asking for, you know, some understanding this year that things are dramatically different. But we're asking for the grain companies to look at, in particular, the perhaps a reduction or elimination of some of the fees, administrative fees, costs like that are pretty exorbitant to farmers that just don't have the cash or just don't have the grain to fill the contracts. And we're hoping that the grain companies and the farmers could work together on this.
And with grain contracts, I think farmers always know that they're assuming a little bit of a risk because, you know, we can't predict the future markets. But this year's season, with the low yields and the climbing grain prices that seem to still be going up, what type of position does this put farmers in financially?
It puts many farmers in a real bind. You know, normally we wouldn't see this kind of price increase. In some cases, and in a lot of cases, the price of the grain may have doubled from the time that the farmer signed the contract until recently. And that's really beyond the farmer's control. So, you know, some of the contracts, I think they need to be looked at in a different light. Perhaps next year, there should be more time spent on looking at contracts that are fair to both parties and not as one-sided as they seem to us.
Yeah. And hopefully your guys' call for support will help generate discussion on how to make changes that will benefit both parties. Ray, thank you so much for your time today on this.
You're welcome, Jillian. Yeah, welcome. Anytime, Jillian. Thanks for giving us a call.